Hello, everyone. I hope you're keeping well, and also hopefully you can hear me. Um, so if you can hear me, can you just please let me know in the chat, just so that my audio is working. Um, and I won't go any further, just in case no one can hear me. Hopefully, if someone could just let me know in the chat. I take it. I take it you can hear me. Audio fine, mate. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, they're all coming through. Okay, perfect. Okay, just didn't want to be talking to myself, so I'm glad you can hear me. Um, Welcome everyone, and thanks for coming along to another psychology Q&A with MatchFit. We ran one of these not too long ago now, actually about a month ago, and seems to be go down quite well. And there were lots and lots of questions. Actually, we didn't get around to on the day, so it's good to do another one this time around. So. Um, as with all of them, I'll do a little introduction, and as always, like please, there's actually a couple of questions in the chat box already, but if you can just keep those questions coming, and they can be any aspect of psychology, well-being, performance that you can think of. So there's no silly questions or anything like that. Just please ask anything, and hopefully in the next half an hour, I can get through as many different things as come through. And also, I'm also thinking, like, if you're a player sitting there, are some things that you want to have a bit of help with. If you're a parent or a carer or guardian or whoever, and you've got some questions that you might have, then great. If you're a coach, and there's definitely a couple of coaching questions that have come in, like, fantastic as well. So just like, yeah, anything that springs to mind, yeah, just pop it in the chat. And I've also got a couple of questions as well written down from what other people have asked me previously. So yeah, we'll get around to them. But for those of you that don't know me, my name's Barney, and I'm the sports psychologist that works for MatchFit. Sports psychology, for those that maybe aren't as familiar with it, it's essentially, it covers lots of different areas, but we really try and look at how to try and get the most out of your performance, whether that be on the pitch, your day-to-day lives, and just trying to understand people as best we can. There's a performance element to it, and there's also a big well-being element to it, because if you feel a little bit better, you're more than likely going to go and perform a little bit better as well. So that it kind of goes hand in hand. So again, like, sports psychology is a relatively newish discipline. It's still developing. So again, like, these type of things, getting to ask some of your questions is really cool. So let's go. I've got a couple of questions on the screen. But yeah, like I say, please just keep them coming in. And if my audio goes, just tell me in the chat, please, because I want to have no way of knowing. So, and I'm going to bring the questions up on the screen so people can see them as well. So this first question came in earlier from Coach Danny, and they said, looking for a few insights, so like recommendations around like how to energize and pump up and prepare some 13, 14-year-old boys before they go out and play. And there's a reference here around like match talks, like things to do during the warm-ups. So a really, really good question. And when I was reading this earlier, I jotted down a couple of little notes, and for me, like, one of the big things that springs to mind here is around like how we motivate and how we energize individuals, like, before a match. And again, like, there's lots of different ways that we might explore this, but like, I wrote down three main things that I think are always really important when you're thinking about going and preparing and motivating individuals. And the first one is, particularly when they're like 13, 14, 15, like anywhere within those adolescent years, you want to try and make something as purposeful as possible. So like, if people feel like they're engaged in it or have a say over something, then it's just going to help when it comes to like individuals like carrying out a task. So the example would be, if people at the age of 13, 14, 15 have a say on like how they warm up, have a say on like different drills that you might want to do. Have a say on like, one person's captain, and then you rotate it, and then you get a bit of an opportunity to be a leader within the group. If you've got a bit of autonomy or say over something, it just gives you that extra little bit of motivation or energizing, like before a match. So what we know about human behavior is if we have a certain level of control or autonomy over something, that can just help us with levels of motivation. So I'd say get people involved, like ask them directly, like, how do we make this fun? How do we make this energizing? What level of motivation do you need? What do you need from us in these warm-ups? Because it will be so different from group to group. And a question like this comes through a lot of the time. And all I'd be saying is like, share the dilemma with the group, ask them like what sort of things they would like to do as part of their warm-up, because again, then you're creating that little bit of buy-in. So I think that's one thing I'd say. The other thing I'd say is, and we don't necessarily grow out of this, but like introduce a level of competition. Like people like competing, particularly if you go into like team sports, or if you're involved in or any sport from a young age. Like there'll be that element of like wanting to do something or wanting to win at something. So like within your warm-ups and before the game, like even creating 2 teams or having like something to be won or lost, or having like rewards or something where there's an element of you feel like you're getting something out of it, because that element of competition can just really try and draw out and make something quite purposeful and meaningful. So again, you can probably get creative with how you do that, but when there's something to be won or lost, sometimes that can just like elevate motivation. So I think that's also important. And also there's an element of like, we term it as like relatedness, but essentially it's like how connected do people feel. So if you do a warm up together, like the aspect of bringing people together and feeling like you're doing something as a collective is really impactful. Whereas I've seen some places where people go and do lots of different warm ups all over the place. So like a player will be over there, you have a group of people over there, you've then got a couple of people doing some like technical, tactical bits over there. At times that can be important because you're focusing on your specific aspects, but it almost like splits groups. So at times I think like, how do you bring people together? How do you draw people in? And I think that's really important as well. So yeah, like really good question. But hopefully that those things are just some suggestions to hold in mind when you're thinking about your coaching setups and what you might want to do. I'm going to try and bring this one down. And then there's one here from another coaching question that's come up around whereabouts would you place your talk? So some players are still very bummed if you're not in the starting line out. It's a high level group and a good amount of immaturity and lack of confidence. So again, like where you place your talks, I would always say like this can vary, because your talks are going to be very different, aren't they? So there's sometimes where you might have to respond to something. So if you're a parent or a coach or a captain or a player, like whatever it might be, there's situations where you're going to need to respond. So you're going to have the moments where things aren't planned. So you're going to have to respond to different things in different moments, depending on if there's an injury, depending on if there's a certain situation in a game, if there's a red card, I don't know. There could be loads of things. In terms of those things that you can plan for, so your halftime team talk, your before the match talks, your debriefs after a game, I would always say I don't think it really matters where you place your talks. I think as long as you've got a consistency of players knowing when you're going to have your talk, so one before the match, one midway through, and then one after, I think that just gives people a bit of clarity to know, oh, this is what to expect. But in terms of like, sometimes I think about the content, and some coaches that I've worked for in the past have shared this as a dilemma, and they go, how do you give good talks to groups of young people who their level of engagement will be in and out at different times? So they could be really engaged and then other times less engaged. And ultimately I'd always say like, bring people into that. So rather than you speaking first and foremost, like ask the opinion of the group, because they're the people that are either been in the match, they've either been it's half time, so they've got some feedback. Like ask the group, like, what do you think? Like always ask with a bit of an open question to go like, let's get the thoughts of the group. And then you can start picking out bits, and then you can start like teasing out a few things that you want to add in. But again, like we go back to that thing around like players wanting to feel like they're part of something. Have their say at the start, and then you can filter a few of your suggestions in, rather than here's what I've seen, this is what I think, go out and implement. It's, what do you think? What are you seeing? What you're noticing? Okay, like, here's something that I've picked out from my observations, and how can we work that together? So again, there's different ways of doing it, but again, like, something like that is just really helpful when it comes to creating buy-in, creating like motivation levels for players. So again, I'm not sure if I've gone off on a tangent there at all, but hopefully that gives you some insight in terms of like where I'd go to with something like that. But yeah, really good question. And I'd also just on this really briefly, and I will move on, but like the element of like how to do like a debrief. So when to have like your speech after a game, for example, or like when do you do a debrief? Like there's often like a process that you can probably go through. And what I found is sometimes really helpful is something where you go like stop, start, continue. So like, what are some things that we've done really well today? So what are some things that we're going to continue as a team? And they can be like technical elements, tactical, they can be all sorts. So like things that we're going to continue. Two things that we might like stop. So if there was like a poor challenge, or if there was a bad reaction, or if there was like someone throwing their hands up in the air, like how do we as a team limit that or stop that moving forward? So you like try and identify those things. And then you go like the start part, like what are things that we haven't even considered in this match? What are things that next time we would look to try and do? So that stop, start, continue is almost like a way of like forming your debriefs and a way of like bringing it together. And doing that as a team can be really helpful. So yeah, hopefully that gives a couple of answers to that question. Questions come in at the. I'm just scrolling down. I've got a couple of bits on my bit of paper here as well. But yeah, if there's any more questions that come in, please do ping them over. The question is, how do you help a young player stay motivated after a setback? So this is again, this is one that we hear quite a lot. And I always think, particularly even for young people or from any age, really, like injuries and setbacks and negatives, they're never easy things to deal with. Like, it doesn't matter what your age, they're always difficult. Right? And I think some people sugarcoat it and they skirt around it and go, oh, you just deal with it and you move around it and it's part and parcel of life. Like, normalize the fact that setbacks aren't easy. Like, I think that's always like a really important point to go to, because they're not easy things to go through. Like, but they're also inevitable. So particularly when you're talking about in a football situation, there are going to be loads and loads of setbacks. And if I think about a couple of them, like to bring this question to life, I go like injury. Okay, so you could have a lot of time out at the start of a season. You could be out from the start, and then you might not come back at all, depending on the severity of your injury. You could get lots of little injuries throughout the different season. You could get players coming in and taking your position because they've outperformed you in training, or they're very good at something else that maybe you can't bring in that situation. Sometimes there's dynamics in the team where people don't really get on with one another, and that can be really frustrating because you just want to be able to get on with people. But what we know in team sport is that it's very unrealistic because you get loads of different personalities. So there's loads of setbacks. And then you think about the things in a game and you go, I've just given the ball away and they've gone and scored. Or you go, I've just slipped over, or you've conceded as a goalkeeper one that you maybe should save. Like, there's loads of things that can happen. And the thing that I would firstly go to, and the reason I say it, is I go, normalize that they're hard, normalize they're difficult. And whoever you're dealing with it, just go, yeah, it's hard. But ultimately, that's happened. What are you going to do about it? And then I often think, like, as a way of like processing and dealing with emotions, is you try and follow a pattern of going. And again, if you're listening to this, if you've got something to jot something down or whatever, but like, I always go like, the first stage is accept. Okay, so the acceptance part is you can't go back and undo it. You can't go back and undo that slip or undo the fact that you got injured. Like, so you firstly go through that acceptance part, and then what I'd go around and I'd say, right, the next part is the ability to like commit to something. So in that moment, if you've slipped over, the first thing you do is accept. Second thing you do is like commit. So what can I do in the next passage of play? What can I do in the next 3 seconds just to positively influence my performance? And that can be just standing back up. It could be taking a deep breath. It could be communicating with someone, like bring it back to a really controllable, committable action. And that's really key in those moments, because what we do know is that if a player sometimes makes a mistake, their head sometimes goes and it drifts and it becomes distracted, and you start thinking, oh, what does my coach think, or what does that parent think? Like, just go, accept I can't change it, commit to something that feels realistic, so a controllable action. And then after the game, you can then reflect on it. You can go back and you can go and think, how did I respond to that? Okay, how did I go about it? What was my process? What did I do about it? When you're in a game, it's really hard to do because it moves so quickly. You have to be able to process and deal with things in the moment. After the game, you've got lots of time. You can go back, you can think about the mistakes, you can write them down, you can delve into it. But the in the moment stuff, I would go, accept it, connect to something that feels realistic, and then you can reflect as a process after a game. So if you follow those 3 mental processes, that just gives you a really good grounding to go, mistakes are inevitable, but they're really helpful. And then you go, okay, what can I bring it back to? A committable action, something that feels controllable. And then after the game, you can go and reflect on it with your parents or with a teammate or with a sibling, or it doesn't matter. Like you can follow that process in all the things you do. So hopefully that's helpful for that question. But yeah, good one coming in. I think there's a couple more because they pop up and then I lose them. But if I go down, so is this the next one in the line? Yeah, I think it is. So this question's come through around how do you instill a championship culture within a team? And then, okay, so this is a follow-up. It's a good question, and it's a really difficult one, because what we do know is that people talk a lot about environments and culture and successful environments and all these different types of things, like and you can read loads of different books that will give you different versions, won't they? If there's, I don't know if anyone's read around like the Barcelona setup around like their culture and their environment. And in fact, there's lots of them that are done with different football clubs and how they go about like creating championship or world leading environments. There's a book called I've been reading recently, which is called Legacy, which is all about like New Zealand All Blacks and how they create winning environments and how they go out and like instill a culture, and that enables to bring people together. So, and there's like lessons learned along the way that you want to try and apply to different environments. I think it's really hard to answer, because like you could read those books and you could take principles around like having people have like different leadership roles in different organizations. You can have like having a culture where there's like mistakes are inevitable, where you could go, like we try and create like a psychologically safe environment, or we like instill our values within our people. Like there's loads of different things you can do. But what I would say is like, rather than going and like reading those things and taking it, but try and find something that's meaningful for the team that you're within. So like the principles that work for Barcelona or for New Zealand or for whoever else, like they're great lessons, but they might not mean anything to the team that you work with, because of like where you're from and the environment you're in and the people you're with. Like it's all those different types of things. So like what I would try and say is, as a way of like trying to instill a culture, is go like, try and have an emphasis on like understanding the people in the environment, because they're the ones that are going to drive the values, the destination, all those things. So like just try and understand what makes people tick. And that can go, you're sitting down with a player, or you're sitting down with an individual and going like, where do you want to get to? What's important to you? What are your drivers? What are your motivating factors? Like, because they could be personal, they could be family, they can be living situations, they can be financial, they can be so many different types of things. But without that, like we don't have an understanding about what the people need in our environments. And that's where, if you go back to like lots of the different cultures and winning habits, go from, let's understand the people, let's understand their values, and then we build from there. Like rather than going, I really like that topic or that value or that from what they're doing, let's put it over here. because it doesn't have that meaning, it doesn't have that level of connection to it, because it's just been picked from somewhere else. So go find the people in the environment, take time to understand them, what makes them get out of bed in the morning and go for a run and drive themselves and motivate themselves and where they want to get to. And then you go, well, how do we support that process? How are we going to help you people get there? And then that's a way of creating a winning culture, by going, we understand the people, and then where are we going to get to? Like, almost draw it out from understanding those needs. So again, like, I know it's probably not the typical answer of going, oh yeah, here's 10 things that you would go with, but ultimately, like, a lot of those things fail at the first hurdle unless you understand the people and what are going into it. So I'd start with that, and then you can build a culture from there. So yeah, hopefully that answers it a little bit. Maybe not. Maybe it's gone off on one, but hopefully it's answered a little bit. How do you still? Oh no, that's the same one. This question has come through, which is good question. Yeah. So how do you stay positive whilst playing out of position? So I was actually working with someone recently who said this exact thing to me, and maybe not in those words, but it was along those lines of, I don't want to play in this position, but I have to do it. Like, try and help me understand this a little bit. How do I stay positive? So it was along those similar lines. Again, like, in these situations, like, I'd say it's, what's really important is you don't have to stay positive. I know it sounds really maybe counterintuitive, but you don't need to stay positive. Like, in these situations, like, sometimes we don't want to go and play I don't know, like this. So I'll give this example of what this person playing. So they were a winger, but they were actually asked to play left back. So they had to play a bit more defensive, or as a wing back essentially, and they wanted a bit more progressive and get into the opposition half and influence it. But they didn't feel like they had the stamina to get up and down. So then that would influence their ability to get in the box. So that was the dilemma they shared. And ultimately, yeah, like, you don't have to be really positive and have like a smile and being like, and having that kind of aura about you. But I guess what's really important in these situations is if you can show some adaptability, if you can show some ability to flex and adapt and put your maybe own needs to the side at times and go, well, what's best for the team? And I think sometimes that's really, really important. And I also think what's in line with this, and the advice I said to this other person was, like, get some real clarity from the coach as to why you're being put into that position. Is it because you're fulfilling just a gap because no one can play there? Is it because you're actually seen as someone who can go and do a really good job there and progress and play multiple games there? Is it the fact that there's someone else that's come into the team who's taking your position and they're trying to find another way to get you into the team? Like, get some clarity on like why you're playing out of position, because then that helps you go, okay, so like, if I am going to reclaim my place, what do I need to do? What do I need to show? If it is that you're going to try and play into this new role, new position, like, how are you going to see it as a learning opportunity? How are you going to grow and develop into that role? So it just gives you a slightly different way of looking at it. But yeah, I would go back to the same point. Like, you don't have to stay positive with it. Like, just try and seek some clarity around the decision. And I think just by doing that, it will just help you go into the match going, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what's going to help me. This is like, just brings a bit of clarity to what I need to do. So yeah, again, like, it's a really common one, by the way, and one that you hear a lot of the time. So like, again, it's a completely normal thing. So just, yeah, try and seek that clarity and really try and show your adaptability, because what we do know is, particularly in modern football with managers, like, you'll probably be asked to play lots of different positions in very flexible ways and be very adaptive. So this just shows your ability to do that. So yeah, but really cool question. Next question is, Adrian said, how to gain confidence after coming back from an ACL injury. So again, like, this is this is a really hard one, because like the ACL injuries, along with other knee injuries, hamstring, whatever, like, they can be, you can be out for long periods. So they can be really, really challenging to come back from. So I'd say like the regain of confidence. I don't know, by the way, what phase you're at here. I don't know if you've just experienced it, if you're coming back into playing, if you're coming, if you're training. I don't know what phase you're in here, but I'm going to take it at face value to go like, how do you gain confidence after coming back? So I'm assuming you're almost transitioning back into playing after having a long time off. If I'm wrong, please let me know and I can change how I'm going to go about it. But if that's the case, I would always say like really take your time to manage those expectations. So like particularly after having a long period off, what I do see a lot of the time is players going, I want to try and hit the ground running. I want to come back and be almost like the same player and if not better, because I've had time to work on other areas and develop and grow and get stronger in other areas. What we know is like that's unlikely to be the case, and it's going to be really hard to reintegrate and get yourself back in. So perfect, yeah, all correct, coming back into playing. So the first thing I'd say is around like just really trying to like manage those expectations, like manage the expectations of what is realistic, what is achievable in those early stages. So as you're transitioning back into playing, like set yourself some really specific like technical and tactical goals that feel really achievable. Set yourself some physical challenges or physical things that are really, really achievable, particularly within those early stages. And just be generally really good to yourself or really kind to yourself, because what you know is you come back in, suddenly you get really excited, you want to be playing, you're back around players potentially. Like what we don't want is that it just like you put too much pressure on it or it becomes really frustrating, you have a recurrence or whatever it might be. So just make sure you're pausing to take the time. And then also like the management of those expectations, like go in and say, okay, like within the first few weeks within training, I want to go and hit these kind of areas. So like almost like write them down, create some really simple goals that you want to achieve. And then as you're doing that, as you come back into playing, you can almost tick them off as you come back in. So having something really visual that you're looking at, I think is really important. And the second thing I'd say, because I think your confidence, your question related to confidence, didn't it? And what we do know around like how confidence works is it responds really well to small wins. So like your ability to hit some small targets or have some mini wins or hit some like really specific targets in those early stages are going to be really, really beneficial to your level of confidence. And as you do that, as you start ticking them off, as you start regaining and building your confidence over time, you can then add to those goals. But what I would say is that particularly in those early stages, like really strip it back, really simplify it, create some really tangible, realistic, achievable goals that limit those expectations, so then you can come in and start playing again. Because I've seen loads of times where players go, I'm back, here we go, I'm straight back into it, and then can't quite meet their expectations, get really frustrated, overtrain, do other things. So again, just try and like, as frustrating as that might be, just try and like pause it, take your time, be good to yourself as you're transitioning back in. So hopefully that answers it. But really, really hard to manage and deal with. So Logan, Adrian, have I missed? Oh no, sorry, that was just a follow-up. Logan has said how to gain more confidence in front of goal. So is this a result of like after missing a couple, or is this like just more generally just trying to manage it? Because I'd say like you could probably read this two ways. Like on the one side, if you've had a bit of a at the same time, what I'd say is like if you've had a bit of a spell where you're not scoring, and if you're a striker and you're not quite getting on the end of things or not doing those things, and then your confidence can take a knock. If it's in a game and you've missed an opportunity 1v1 or an opportunity to get your head on it or whatever it might be, like, and you've missed it or you've pulled it or whatever those things, like, again, a really hard thing to be able to do. But I think I've just caught it in the corner of my eye. You said just more generally. So again, more generally, like regaining confidence in front of goal. Again, it goes back to those similar to Adrian's, in a way similar to what I was just talking about with Adrian. Like go back to those really clear, simple processes. Like, what does it mean to hit a ball confidently in front of goal? Like, go back to your set process. Keep things really simple. So if that's going and practicing your technique and honing it and missing a few and then coming back and doing it again, like just keep the repetition, keep those practicing, keep things really, really simple. Like, and I sometimes think when we've had a spell where we're not getting on the end of things or we're missing, we try and then do the opposite, which is then I've got to do something incredible. I've got to try and like show myself on the ball. I've got to try and do something that's overcompensating for the fact that I'm not putting it in front of the back of the net. Like, but I would say just go back to your simple processes. Like go back to like just practicing with, even with no goalie there, just getting used to striking the ball in the back of the net. Just follow the motion and get yourself back into it. I'd also then say, right, in a game, like what are some things that you can like go back to remind yourself of? Like, are you getting in behind? Are you staying on the last man? Are you getting yourself in like decent positions to get yourself on the end of these opportunities? Like, are you communicating well? Are you checking your shoulders? Are you scanning? Are you doing all those other things that if you do them well enough, they'll just get yourself back into those goal scoring positions? And again, what I'd say in situations like this is like you might have a tendency to go, oh, if I'm not scoring, like people are going to start looking at me, or my position's under threat, or I'm not good enough, or those critical voices start to like circle around in your head. So again, like all you're doing with those things is going, rather than listening to them, you're going back to the point of, right, I've accepted it. They're going to happen. Like similar to the point earlier, like you accept they're going to happen, and I'm going to commit to something that feels really, really helpful here, which is I'm going to communicate. I'm going to stay on the last person. I'm going to accelerate my running behind. I'm going to try and show for the ball. I'm going to do all those things that just helps me get yourself back into the game. And just by doing that over time, it becomes less, I need to put it in the back of the net, and more about your level of performance and actually doing the things in the game that will then give you those opportunities later down the line. So again, like just try and think about like the controllable actions, those processes, really strip it back. What are the things that you can really control, rather than it's a goal or it's not? There's loads of things within it. It's about getting yourself in position. It's communicating. It's showing for the ball. It's running in behind. It's doing all those things that you can tell yourself. And again, it's just like limiting those distractions that pop into your head. So I'd try and do some of those things rather than, again, like, oh, I need to be more confident in front of goal. Like try and build those other things in along the way. But really cool question. Really good one. Justin, okay. Can I complete? I think this is the next question. Yeah. So can I complete my education and become a football player at the same time? Yeah, absolutely. Like absolutely you can. Again, I don't know your situation. I don't know how old you are. I don't know what you're looking to work towards. But what I do know is, if I can speak to my own experience of doing these things, is I've worked in a few football academies up and down the country, and they have teachers, they have academics, they have people in these environments that you do your education alongside going out and training it in the morning and the afternoon. So you have to do your education around it. So yeah, of course, like you can still work towards your GCSEs, your A levels, your whatever it is that you're working towards while you're playing football. And actually, from my side of things, I maybe this is selfishly, I'm not sure, but like I would actively encourage it, because I often think in situations like this, like we can get so caught up in your want and your drive that I have to be a footballer. So therefore your identity or the person that you are becomes, I'm a footballer. Like, whereas if you're doing an education, if you're doing things away from football, wherever that be, other interests, music, other hobbies, education, I don't know, whatever it might be, it just gives you more of a balance to your identity, which then helps in the longer term when it goes to thinking about what you actually want to do. So I would keep as many of those different options going as you possibly can. And you might turn around to me and say, oh, that means I don't have enough time to go and train or invest and do what I want to do in football. But ultimately, that balance of identity is also going to really help your performance. And if I give you the example, like people who put everything into, like, I have to be a footballer, I have to be a footballer, like there's an element of pressure that comes on your shoulders with that. And sometimes what we know, if there's too much pressure and we don't have an outlet or a release, that pressure can really negatively influence us, particularly around our well-being and those things. Whereas if you have football as a part of you and you happen to be pretty decent in it, but you're also good in school and you're also good in other hobbies and you do other things. And I know, speaking to lots of people in the match fit, is like there's musicians out there, people are doing piano, people are doing guitar, people are interested in loads of different things. Like people are, when I ask them like, what are you into, they go, I just like being a good friend, spending time with people. Like, fantastic. Like anything that branches your identity away from just being football, I think is really important, because you're creating a broader identity, which then takes the pressure off your shoulders. And then when you come and play, you go, I'm going to give it my all here because I've got these other things, but I'm fully invested in what I'm doing right now. It just gives you that bit more of a release. And I can't promise you this because I don't actually know, but if you spoke to lots and lots of different footballers, I'm pretty sure they'd give you a similar answer around, yes, train really hard, but also invest yourself in other things, have a balance in hobbies, being a good friend, being a good family member, doing other things. Because I just think it's so important to just not put everything into the pressure of becoming a footballer. Because yeah, those multiple different things are just so important when it comes to managing that. So long-winded way of saying yes. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Okay, there aren't any more questions on there, but we've gone over the time slightly, but like honestly fantastic. Like to have those questions coming in is superb. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, it just really helps with the flow of it, that we get some good questions through and can make it as purposeful to the people that are watching it here. So I really hope I've answered some of those questions. People have taken a little bit from this, a couple of things to go and take away and apply. We'll be running other ones of these because we seem to just get lots and lots of interest in these. So we'll run another one next month, or the back end of this month. So please keep a lookout for that. But yeah, again, like some fantastic questions. So I really appreciate that. Okay. Thank you very, very much. Everyone have lovely mornings, evenings, wherever you're watching. And I will see you all very soon. Thanks, everyone.